life always happens. There's somebody watching this right now who's had an interruption in their training or an injury or something where they had to take, a break from getting in the volume, getting in the training sessions. What advice do you have for adapted training now? We'll say at the end of March, if an unexpected event has disrupted somebody's preparation for either the track or Unbound or a gravel race that they have within, let's say, 30 days out. Should they switch to just focus on VO2, high intensity, or focus more on the zone 2, getting the volume in?
Yeah, so this is, I guess, the fun of being an athlete. Like, it's impossible just to have this perfect script that you follow to the T. That it doesn't work that way. So I think the big thing is you need to step back, kind of like assess the situation, try not to be too emotional about it. That's always the hardest thing. So like if you get injured or if you're sick, you need to step back, try and remove your emotion, understand, okay, this is happening. This is the parameters. So now I'm going to try and control what I can control. So let's say, for example, you have a work trip that springs on you and you need to skip a week of training and you have a big event coming up. The easy thing to do is say, well, I'm going to crunch train and I'm going to just do as much work and go as hard as I can for as long as I can. And sometimes that works, but most of the time it can be a little bit self-defeating because then that rolls into the remaining training you have. So to a degree, you need to just reassess the situation of like, all right, now I have this amount of time to train for my event. I need to kind of build back up from where I'm coming from of a week off from this work trip. A lot of times it goes back to your priorities that you have to hit ahead of the event. So if it's something like Unbound, it's those individual prep rides that I was talking about. So in that situation, it would be more about doing volume. So basically picking the thing that that you cannot let go of. So the stimulus that you have to achieve, even if it means letting go of a few other pieces of stimulus. So like, for example, Unbound, if you want to be able to just finish the darn thing, then volume definitely is the most important thing. So if you miss a week of training, hitting intensity isn't necessarily, unless you have no time to train afterwards, it's not really it's probably not going to be the answer. So then that's when volume is the priority and that's when you would take that up. But then, as I was talking about before, if you go out and kill yourself for 8 hours, what's the consequence of that and how does that affect your training? So I know I'm not giving you a good answer or like a simple answer, but this is when it really does kind of depend on what the athlete's goals are and priorities. But it's all about remove your emotion, assess the situation, pick the priorities, and then apply that to the priorities of your training. And what I oftentimes have to do in these situations with my athletes is just pick what we let go of. What are the things that we, if you have to let go of something, what is it? And then how do you change your approach and then even maybe race strategy because maybe you didn't do as much VO2 as you had originally planned, or, maybe your CTL isn't as high as we originally thought it would be. So you might need to be a little bit more conservative during the race. It's that kind of approach where it's just about, saving what you can.
And one, I guess, tip, if you're newer to training for an event like this, I would say a work trip is a controllable, variable. So if you're training, build that in as a recovery week, maybe, in your training block. But there's another piece I want to touch on is like, how much time do you have to be off the bike to actually lose fitness? Because to your point, some people they're off the bike for a week and they think they need to cram, but are you really even losing any fitness if you're off the bike for a week? What is that kind of time frame where it's like becomes detrimental, I guess I would say, to your fitness?
Yeah. It's all about how you go into it. So, for example, if you are riding a really high fitness level, so you're riding a really high volume load, really high intensity load or something, if you take a period of time off, let's say it's a couple days or even a week, the impact isn't going to be that severe. You might not feel great when you get back on the bike, as no one would, but the impact is not going to be a lot, and you can rebuild quickly from that. However, if you are somebody who is not able to train very much, let's say you're only able to average maybe 5 hours a week, or 5 to 10 hours a week, then taking a week off is a big hit. That's a significant percentage of your training. So that's kind of the trade-off is, if you are the type of person that that hits and you have a week and then you're like, okay, now what do I do? It is kind of like control the variables, because it could be a greater hit to you than maybe your counterpart. As far as like the ability to when you might lose fitness, there is some research out there on that. Generally, it's considered to be around the 5-day range is when you will lose aerobic fitness.
Okay.
Sooner than that is going to be kind of that anaerobic range that you will lose. So that's kind of why you can take micro breaks. Like maybe you take a weekend off and it won't really affect your training to a drastic degree. It'll affect downstream, like your build. But as far as losing fitness, I wouldn't really worry about it too much until you start getting into that like 4, 5, 6, 7, and so on day range consecutive. And then there's also how your body responds to rest. If you have a high load ahead of time, it's going to shut down to a pretty significant degree. If you don't, you might come back out of it really fresh and feel really good. And then you'll probably start to face the impact of that. But it's just kind of situational in that regard.